Hello and welcome to Avasant's Digital Forum, the rise of the digital workforce, leveraging automation for enterprise transformation. This event is in partnership with HCL Technologies. My name is Andriana Albert and I will be your MC today. Avasant is thrilled to have partnered with such an innovative organization to bring an hour of thought leadership and expert insights to our audience. Thank you again to HCL for your partnership. As we aim to make these sessions as interactive as possible, we encourage you to utilize the chat and Q&A features on your dashboard to pose questions to the panelists. They will be answering your questions live throughout the session. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's moderator, Walter Josephat. Walter is the former CIO and regional CEO of Wyndham Worldwide and currently an Avasant Technical Fellow. Walter, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Adriana, and I'll be introducing here in a moment our distinguished panel. Today I'm privileged to host a great group of people and a great discussion as we think about digital workforce automation. Automation has become a familiar tool to many in the enterprise environment, but it still evokes so much apprehension out there. So today we want to demystify that a bit. Many enterprises make mistakes during their automation efforts or don't communicate the value of automation to internal stakeholders. In truth, these well-designed automation are meant to free employees from the dullest part of their jobs, allowing them to be more creative, strategic, and more value-added. That digital workforce of the near future is one that works hand in hand, at least figuratively, right? We're trying to automate, so remove that manual piece with robots to create a more seamless operating environment. So you've all heard RPI, AI, chatbots, citizen bots, all kinds of bots, other forms of automation. They're already changing the way we work. Today, what we hope to do is bring to light latest innovation in automation and how things are being best deployed together in the workforce, how to make sure automation enhances your workforce rather than disrupting it, and how automation can transform the enterprise by saving costs, unlocking new business opportunities. So you will hear great things. Globally, today, our enterprises are scaling their digital investments to build a future patient. So how do we reduce, how do we automate, we free up, etc. You can see in a survey that we've done, 92% of respondents are continuing their efforts to become a digital enterprise. A good majority are increasing their investments. Some plan to reduce investments, but you can see that as we get towards the end of the pandemic and on the other side of it, the investment that's being made here and companies realizing how much they need to invest digitally because of not just the war for talent, but what can be done better, cheaper, faster, easily, and then free people up to do more. Andriana, if you could move to the next slide here. Organizations, what we found is increasing their investments. New roles are emerging. This is exciting for all of us, right, in the field. Digital roles emerging in the next 12 months. What you can see here is a new kind of C-suite set of roles, some that have been in existence, but they will evolve and new ones will come about. Technology-specific roles. These are happening today. Their recruiting is out there for them. Note things like Chief AI Officer. Think back even 12 months ago, 2 years ago, would you ever see something like that? IoT directors, etc. And then other digital management roles that are coming about, especially as things emerge, wider scale of 5G, big data, machine learning, empathy trainer, right? That's an interesting one that's out there. So you can see that as we polled people, the percentage of respondents that have seen these new roles introduced, they're coming fast, furious, hot and heavy here. So the future looks bright for being able to manage and lead in this very important area. Adriana, next slide if you can. There we go. So as enterprises evolve to become pandemic ready, right? And I think one of the key lessons out of this pandemic is we all had to change, we all had to adapt to a new normal. And there will probably be, we hope not, but there will probably be new normals to come, right? So what do we need to do to be better prepared for as the world changes? This human to machine workforce will continue to emerge. And you can see that enterprise readiness, and you take a look at where things are, right? More and more enterprises are saying, you know what, we are ready, we need to be ready. Very few, right, are not considering this. There are challenges. You can say that you're ready, but note some of the big ones in terms of lack of effective change management. We all went through the pandemic and we made it happen, but did we make it happen with in the right kind of way of change? Just like it happened, we put people working remotely, et cetera. The lack of clarity on how to redesign jobs, and the lack of clarity of how to manage digital workers. You can see enterprises that have faced this, right? Sharing some great stories, some great learnings. Land Rover, Tata Steel, Equinix, in terms of what they went through, what they've been through, knowing they had to go through it, but also alerting the rest of us that it's not without pain and things to be considered, et cetera. So some really great learnings and great things out there. And we'll explore more of those here coming up with our great panel. Next slide, please. What I take away from this slide, and you should all take away, is regardless of industry that you're in, regardless of where you are playing, your business is playing, et cetera. And I'm seeing this myself as I delve into the nonprofit world throughout, okay? Enterprises are becoming more and more ready for that workforce. As the collaborative workforce evolves, that human intervention will become limited to exception handling. That's a very important statement, right? Relying on machines, relying on automation to do the role, whereby in the past humans handled the role. And again, a very, very important component, very important piece here is that change management functionality, helping companies, helping customers, helping clients through that. And I know our panelists here will be absolutely helpful in sharing their stories, what they've done, what they're working on, and the challenges being faced. So hopefully that gives you a preview, right? This is a very hot area. The world is changing in this area so rapidly. And we're going to now take a little bit of a deeper dive with the experience of our panelists. If we can move to the next slide here. Let me introduce our panelists, and they'll say more about themselves as we get into the questions. I am very privileged today to be with Stephen Miller, the Vice President of AI, Analytics, and Automation for Xerox Corporation. Matthew Barlow, a partner of mine, a compatriot within Avasant. He's the partner and head of business transformation for Avasant. And representing our co-sponsor here today, HCL Technologies, Bob Carroll, who's the Senior Vice President, Digital Process Operations for HCL Technologies. I think what you'll find is we have three great people who can speak to the subject, answer my questions, answer your questions, and really enlighten us on what's happening in the world today with digital automation. So without further ado, I'm going to just jump in here, unless Adriana, do we have a poll that we're going to do here or later, or not at all? We're going to skip that piece.
We're going to skip that and do questions from the audience.
Okay, beautiful. That's great. That's great. So let's dive in with, and again, I'll give this first question just a few extra seconds for folks to introduce themselves and say a little bit more about what they do. I'm going to turn to Stephen for this first question first, and then we'll get to Bob and to Matt. Stephen, can you give me an example of digital workforce automation, driving standardization, driving out manual labor and costs that you've led and delivered? I'd like you, as you answer that, to talk about how you did it, what you learned, so that those participating today can learn and reapply. Steve, we'll give you that, and Bob and Matt, it's coming to you next. So in a couple minutes, be ready for that. Stephen.
Well, sure, Walter. I'm happy to share an example. But first of all, let me just say thank you, Walter, for hosting and for the wonderful introduction. Bob as well, my partner at HCL. Thank you as well for having me here today. Walter, as you introduced me, I think you got it spot on. I lead AI automation and analytics for Xerox. We are really responsible for enabling these technologies both within our company, so really creating a digital way to work for Xerox and a legacy manufacturer. So it's a nice change and an important one for our company to make, and as well for our customers. So I also lead this capability and this work commercially for our company as well. Right. So Walter, to answer your question, really a couple of examples come to mind. I'll choose one. Pretty straightforward, but very important. And really, it's one we partnered with HCL on, and that's really taking away all the manual, error-prone work associated with preparing a customer invoice, right, per the contract terms, right? Pretty straightforward use case for automation at a legacy company like Xerox. There's quite a few requirements, quite a few contract terms, and really, in that scenario, the key was to understand really the business problem, right? Which is billing delays, inaccuracies that lead to the customer dissatisfaction, right? And that impact renewals, as an example. And then really understanding, okay, what are our learnings from that kind of automation? It's really, Walter, the way I would put it is to talk about the approach, right? So first, you understand the as-is process, then you understand what outcomes you're looking for, the opportunities to improve, to optimize the results. You finalize the to-be, and then look for the design tools to run the optimized process, right? The different the different tools, automation capabilities, partners like HCL, for example. And then you go ahead and execute the automation, you operationalize and institutionalize the automated process, training the new workforce. And then you measure the improvements to the business metrics. And that's really our approach when it comes to any automation use case. But that's one that stands out, Walter.
That's wonderful, Stephen. Thanks, and you will have the opportunity to share some other ones here. So whatever number 2 and number 3 was, we'll give you that chance to work those in. Sure. Bob, similar, the same question to you, right? Give us that shining example of digital workforce automation that you drove, that led to manual labor costs out, errors out, and how you did it, what you learned.
Yeah, so thanks, Walter. And just a quick intro. So Bob Carroll, I lead transformation related to our Xerox account. So I partner very, very closely with Steve and his team and all of our process leadership on the Xerox side, really to drive transformation for one, to create efficiency for Xerox, but also just to drive business value and to help enable transformative change for them in their business, right? And so we want to partner together with them. It's a strategic relationship that we have, and so excited to be doing that. Long career of doing this. Stephen and I have worked in the past in other companies together, driving transformation, and so it's a tag team sport, and so excited to be here today as well, and in talking about some of the things that we've done together with Xerox. So Steve mentioned on the invoice side, on the billing side, I'll actually give you an example from our Xerox account in their small and medium business space, which is a very strategic area for them. It's a highly profitable area, but it's one that's been developed via acquisition. So a lot of manual, a lot of non-standard, a lot of opportunity for standardization. And so we partnered very closely with Steve, his team, with the business owners to look at the processes that required the most change and the most impact, or would provide the most impact. And one of those was really just in the F&A space, the accounts payable space, right? Looking at how we could actually drive a reimagined AP process that would be more efficient, more streamlined, better controls, a better experience as well for users. So we did that together, and I think, you know, Steve described some of the approach that we took, and I dive into that a little bit more. He described it on the billing side. I'll talk about it on the AP side, but it's very, very similar, right? How do we, you know, at first understand the process in depth? And so at HCL, we have a number of capabilities around business process management to understand the process in depth, the as-is process. And then from there, you know, how do we reimagine what the process should look like, the outcomes that we want? And when we think about this approach, we at HCL in this digital workforce approach that we really think about is we refer to as hyper intelligent automation, right? So it's more outcome based, thinking about the process end to end. You know, thinking about that first, so process led, technology enabled. You don't want to automate bad process. So how do we do that? So we took that kind of an approach, and Steve kind of went through some of those steps. We applied the same steps in the AP example, and really ended up with a solution that was, you know, delivered significant 60% productivity gains, improved that CSAT, strengthened that compliance. So, you know, that would be one of our best examples of doing that. And I would say we did that in the SMB space. And now what we want to do is actually take and export that out across the enterprise, right, to drive bigger value and bigger benefit for Xerox and its customers.
That's great, Bob. Thank you. Right, and I took some. I'm taking notes from what you all talked about. So when I wrap up, I'm going to steal key phrases, key things that you guys said. I'll give you credit, of course, later, but I'll plagiarize up front. I'll let you know that. Matt, the same question. My partner at Avasant, who I know has been through a number of great experiences. Can you give us an example where you've been involved in that and driving that digital workforce automation?
Sure. We see a lot of the same, right? Like Bob, we've seen a lot of back office, a lot of F&A, really, really strong use cases. As a third-party advisor, obviously we do this across multiple verticals, and the role we play is to design a strategy. So we help clients know what they need. They may not know what they need. And we also help them generate strong business cases and funding. And then our goal is to align them to capable service provider partners who can scale, manage, and deliver value over time, like an HCL. So use cases I've seen that I would probably lay out outside of the case that Bob laid out is we've seen a lot of strong use cases in the vertical I work in, which is in healthcare, where we see things like provider data management or any sort of master data management application themes. We've seen a tremendous amount of use cases in claims processing, and probably some of the more interesting ones come out of things like health interventions. As payers and providers and hospitals have a lot of data, not only are you automating a manual task, you're supplying your workforce with information they never would have otherwise had to create outcomes they never would have otherwise had the opportunity to create. So we're seeing things like that in clinical interventions with member services and provider services. For me, you know, going into this, you know, it's been many years since I started really doing this, but I had to rethink what automation was, because what we discovered over time is that individuals don't perform binary tasks all day, right? Individuals, some portion of their day is very, very binary tasks, and some portion of their day is very subjective. And we had to learn as we develop business cases for the CXOs that we do these business cases on behalf of, how do we compartmentalize what is repeatable, what can be scalable, and how do we segment that from the judgment-based activity? So we had to stop thinking of it the same way you would think of business process outsourcing, for example, and think of it in a lot more complicated fashion. Whereas, how do we take out you know, sort of the net transactional work and then supply the workforce with more information to enable them to do their jobs better? So it is a workforce and automation orchestration play. That's the most important element. And the business cases for that are more complicated. They're not quite as straightforward as staff augmentation, but they provide a tremendous amount more business value.
Super. That's great. And again, I'm glad we're recording, right? So that if I don't hit these great points, the audience can go back and see them. Matt, great point on non-binary. Let's go to the next question. And Bob, I'm going to start with you on this. In delivering digital workforce automation, what skills and core competencies does your organization at HCL have and use to enable your success in the area? And what did you look to your partners, who you were doing with, like as you worked with Stephen and Xerox, or you worked with others? What do you look for them to bring to the table to enhance your success? And again, spoiler alert, Stephen and Matt, this question's coming to you in that order next. So, Bob.
Yeah, so thanks. So capabilities, I think, first of all, HCL brings a wealth of automation capability and scale as well. Over 1,400 dedicated resources that do this type of work, right, across our accounts and across our DPO accounts to drive outcomes for our customers. So I think that's one big area. The workforce automation approach that I described before, that hyper intelligent automation approach, is something that we've developed over our journey in this space, right? So our learning of that. So having this holistic approach toward automation, right? Outcome driven versus the tool and technology driven, and really helping us drive end-to-end transformation of the business processes. I think that approach is something else that we bring. The other thing that I didn't mention in the first example, and I wanted to bring out here, was we also bring a digital colleague platform. So a set of capabilities that really help us have a single interface, configurable platform. It's a package of technologies that are both HCL developed, as well as some of the ones that we partner with, to provide us more of an end-to-end process solution and deliver those business outcomes that we talked about. So having that at the ready to be able to implement was something else that we bring. A couple of other things real quick is I mentioned the BPM approach. So we have a 3-lever approach focused on process, task mining first, understanding process risk and automation opportunity, and so that's an approach. And I think the other thing is that's an enabler for us is really a structured governance process. How do you align and control change well with your stakeholders? And that's been very, very important for us. And then, you mentioned, Walter, what else do we need from the partner to be successful? And I think Steve will highlight this, but this is a great marriage here together. But, you need a partner who's able to help you drive that standardization. Again, transformation is a team sport. It takes process leadership. It takes sponsorship. And it takes their capability as well. And when you put them together, you can accelerate.
That's a great way to hand off to Stephen, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Bob. Thank you, Walter, and thank you, Bob. Yeah, I think just to kind of continue that discussion, I think as we look at implementing automation here in our legacy environment, it really takes a partner that understands not just our strategy, but our business, our customers, but really what it means to drive a digital way to work and the outcomes associated with that. And just taking that a step further, I think as Matthew was talking about earlier, the understanding the process and the work and the outcomes that the business needs to get done, particularly as Bob was talking about earlier at Xerox in our SMB space. Our SMB business is very strategic for Xerox. It's a growing business for us, and one we are investing in heavily, both in automation capability internally and also selling and partnering with our customers. And to have a partner like HCL who brings that digital way to work to the way we execute with our SMB partners and customers, and then for us to be able to execute that automation, understanding, as Matthew said, the process and the way work gets done, particularly in the SMB space where we have a lot of expertise, it really lends itself to, I would say, optimizing the automation that we receive from, or I should say, optimizing the value we receive from the automation we're implementing, both for our customers and with our partners here. So again, I would just double down on the process knowledge, understanding those outcomes, just key for us, and then making sure the partners, think the same way.
That's great. Excellent. Matt, as you've done your work and you've made great things happen, right? You, I know, bring great skills and great competencies to the table, right? What have you done? What have you brought to that table? And then what have you looked to your partnering firms to partner with you and enable with you?
Yeah, I'll focus on the softer side a little bit of this. So enabling success in automation does require some planning around what is your company's identity. Your employees have to understand what's driving the change, why is there a need to change, how does everyone benefit from the change, from the employees all the way down to the customer. So, being that person whose role is dramatically changing is always tough, right? But if I start realizing the company's invested in retooling my skill set, that I'm much better equipped being a part of a workforce that's working in concert with automation technologies that better drive processes, I tend to have a much better appreciation for the change. And I tend to even totally embrace the change moving forward. And just using sort of some of the exaggerated examples, Amazon is not so successful because they were the first to start thinking of how to use automation. They were successful because they were the first to perfect how to automate with people and digital technologies in a big orchestra that's hyper-focused on the end product and the customer. So what are those competencies that you laid out there? Those competencies are understand how to get the most value out of your people resources and what the value you'll get out of the automation tasks. To have an employee-focused point of view as you're trying to transform your organization. It is about automation, but it's how to infuse that automation into an organization that's full of people that have to understand that vision and focus on the value of what can be done, not just the cost. I mean, there's going to be some benefit. There's going to be some cost benefit, undoubtedly, but there's a tremendous amount of business value benefit with having better data, with knowing things at the right time and the right place when you need those things. And executives understanding that the business case is as much on business value, if not more, than it can be on the cost side is extremely powerful going into making cases for big projects like this.
Super. I'm going to throw another question at you, and then Adriana, maybe we turn to some of the audience questions if we have them.
That'd be great.
Something that's on my mind, guys, all the time. I think it's on our minds as CIOs, CDOs, the new roles that are out there as well, is information security. Okay. So Matt, I'm going to start with you, and I'll go to Bob and then Stephen. As you work to deliver digital workforce automation, how do you balance that speed? Let's go fast. Let's make it happen. Let's digitize. Let's automate. And obviously deliver with quality, but yet go careful enough to make sure that you're handling all the information security challenges. And I can imagine that if you wait to handle all the challenges, you'd be waiting forever and you wouldn't automate, right? So, Matt, what's your approach to balancing and handling information security?
Yeah, I'll let Bob and Steve talk a little bit more about the logistics on how do you keep it secure. But I will tell you, as far as the strategy side, right, we come across companies all the time who want to embark on doing something, right? So they could go out and buy licenses tomorrow and they can create their own little team and say, go do stuff, right? And those teams will take those licenses and try to do things. You're going to go through many, many hard lessons along the way. And as everyone is aware, the more data you have out there, the more systems that come into play, especially RPA systems, the more vulnerable you are. So if you just go out there like it's a sandbox, throw a team at this stuff and say, go start to automate things and learn things, you multiply your exposure as it relates to security risk. So I think to us, it's very important to be deliberate. As a third-party advisor, it's very important for us to say, what do you want to accomplish? What is your business goal? And to align you with a proven company who not only can bring the capabilities to do the automation, but manage that and scale that over time, and who can limit your exposure in terms of how you use these tools. where you use them, how you apply them. And a company who's done this 200 times, 300 times is going to have a lot of lessons that you won't have trying to do it once. And so for us, it's very, very important to align the suppliers to people, to create the level of trust and to understand what that long-term vision is, and to align the suppliers to that long-term vision. And I think that's the way you do it, and you don't trip along the way.
So great lead in to a great supplier who's had to do this over and over and over again, a great supplier partner. Bob, give us your thoughts on that piece.
Yeah, it's a really important point and question, and I think Matt touched on the key is one, having the experience of being able to deal with this, right? And so in our environment, in our situation, you know, we're operating in Xerox's IT and process landscape. So, you know, the way that we need to be able to partner with Steve and his organization and the IT organization at Xerox, there has to be close partnering, clear governance, you know, in a controlled process of change, in order to make sure that we're integrating effectively into the environment and following all the protocols that Xerox has in place. So, you know, during our process assessment stage, you know, we're going to assess some of those issues, potential issues, controls that need to be met, looking at regulatory risk compliance. We'll do that in bringing in knowledge that we have from other experiences and other clients. And then as well, I guess the other thing that we bring, well, is, you know, our automation tools themselves are designed and developed with security in mind. So when we're actually deploying these, you know, security is already built into them and as a part of the development lifecycle. So those combined in that partnering and governance with Steve and his organization are really, really critical.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So Steve, you've got two great guys who look at it from that outside helping perspective to your organization. And I'm just curious, you know, how you've approached it with, I'll call it DWA for short, digital workforce automation and security and more.
Yeah, I'll just add one point on the security side. I think I think Matt and Bob covered it, but for us, the bots need to be as secure as any of the infrastructure or applications we run in our environment, and the solutioning of the security around how the bots work and how the bots access and manipulate data is really at the highest level, right? So again, having a partner like Bob and HCL is critical for some of the more complex use cases that we implement, and that's why we work with a partner like HCL for those complex use cases, because the security is really a non-option. And it just has to be, right? So that's the way we look at it. But Walter, I would add one more point about automation and security. In Xerox, compliance and automation is really goes hand in hand. We have a number of automation solutions that we have delivered to clients and also have implemented ourselves that help us maintain compliance in our operating environment. So we have any number of automated and bot solutions that help us do user access control, terminations, scrubs on different applications. So when it comes to automation and compliance, of course, we were taking this question from the angle of, hey, how do you secure the bots operating in your environment? But the bot solutions are also very important for executing compliance and control in the solutions themselves. So we use that pretty extensively, and it's been quite successful for us and a number of our clients.
So taking it seriously internally of what you automate and taking it seriously for what you offer as products and services to the customer. That's
Exactly.
great. Super. Adriana, maybe we turn to an audience question, right? And we challenge our great panelists with answering that.
Yeah, we've got quite a few. So first up, what's next for automation from technology perspective beyond end-to-end automation and hyper-automation?
Super. Stephen, why don't we turn to you, and then Matt and Bob. We'll go in that order. How's that sound?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you know, what's next after RPA and the hyper-automation Bob was talking about? I mean, you know, for us, it's all about AI and machine learning, and really more value in higher capability automation. So bots, when we say AI, it's really bots that are learning about the environment and can predict and really make higher level decisions in a process or around and through across a process in an organization. And really that's where the value in automation is going, I think, very rapidly, right? So that would be my answer there. And we're implementing many AI use cases on top of automated processes that are really executed end to end with RPA. So that's kind of the next next value breakthrough we see.
Super. Matthew?
I like where Steve's going with this. So I mean, if you use the use cases I talked about before, right? How do you automate a claim? How do you update a provider record? I think those were pretty straightforward use cases over the last 10 years. The challenges most companies are dealing with is, do I standardize my platforms and then automate, or do I automate and standardize my platforms later? So I think that's been the challenge of the last 10 years. I don't know that that's totally behind us, right? I think that the path to automate with 19 SAP instances around the globe is a complicated path, and there's no way to make that really, really easy. But to me, the value cases that are emerging in the last few years that are super interesting are these interventions, right? It's having the data to proactively deliver on a business transaction where you never had a business transaction before. Take any phone call that any business has as a part of their member interactions, or any chat that a member has as a part of any of their interactions. There's a point in time where that person is communicating with your business. How are you communicating back? Are you capitalizing on those opportunities? Are you giving them the things that they don't even know they need at that moment in time? And I think interactions like that, use cases like that exist in all verticals. Every customer call, every member chat, every text you send, all the way along those value chains with your customer is an opportunity to deliver more value from the business that you serve to them and the services that you provide to them. And so to me, those are the most interesting use cases. They're the ones that tend to be more revenue driving rather than cost driven. They tend to be more game changing from a business differentiation standpoint. And those are the ones that tend to capture my attention as opposed to some of the more transactional.
Super, Matthew. Thank you. Bob, lots of good answers here, but I'm sure we can challenge you on what haven't these two guys addressed or said that you look at from a great company like HCL's perspective of what's next?
Yeah, so I think they hit on it, and I'll just build on it, to be honest. So, because I really think the themes are very important. So I think the business value theme, so how you're actually focused not just on cost and productivity, but the opportunities to actually create more business value related to impacting working capital, impacting CSAT, those types of outcomes that you're trying to generate. I think that's one. And I think the second is, in order to do that, and this follows a path that we've been down through process, BPM kinds of work over the past 20 years, right? Is how are you looking more horizontally across processes, not just within a siloed domain, but how are you looking at connecting the business processes more end to end to generate those outcomes? I think looking for solutions around that and developing solutions around that, I think is what's really important. And again, that's where I tie in what we're trying to do with hyper automation and trying to think more outcome focused versus just technology and within an individual silo.
Wonderful. I think the discussion has generated a number of great questions. I can see them building in the chat. I'm not focused on reading them. So Andrea, I'm going to turn to you again with what's up next question-wise.
Sure. This one is about how to ensure in the current state the way work gets done. It's captured in a way to uncover opportunities and not just automate a poor process. So how do you ensure the value isn't just automating a poor process to make it run faster?
I love this question. It speaks to a key point that one of you guys made before, which I'll touch on at the end, of automating bad processes. Anybody, rather than me stating an order here, anybody want to jump in first? Bob, you got your hand up first. I saw that one out of the corner of my eye. So jump in.
I'll take it. And again, I think I said it before, but I'll just say it again. I think, again, the way we think about this is process-led, tech-enabled. And so at the end of the day, I think having a deep understanding of the as is, Understanding then with your stakeholders, what 2B looks like. So where are you trying to go? What are the outcomes that you're trying to drive? And having a structured approach to move through that so that you're really thinking about, again, not just a point solution that is, delivering a little bit of efficiency right now, but maybe a throwaway, versus really thinking about how you want to reimagine the business process and move towards something that's more of a golden process, standardize around that, and then you utilize and apply the right technology solution to it. So again, that label of process-led, tech-enabled just really helps me be able to think about it that way. And again, I think you need to have a structured approach to do that. It's very, very tempting just to dive in and start throwing bots at things. And I think that's in the long run, that really isn't as beneficial as the other approach.
Yeah,
That's
I
great.
agree.
Stephen, you had a way in there, or Matt?
Yeah, I was just going to agree with Bob and just add that, a lot of our automation is really not about efficiencies and removing people so much as it is really really driving additional productivity and taking advantage or optimizing, for example, an underutilized workforce, right? So when you think about the type of automation and going beyond those traditional use cases maybe that we started the call with, we're really looking at some I would say more advanced use cases where the automation is enabling our people. And to Bob's point, you really have to have a good understanding of the process and then how that work is going to improve, and then be able to, as we were talking about, be able to track that and really improve outcomes of our people, right, with enabled technology. So it's very much in line with I think our visions and strategies are very much aligned with the way we work together, and very important and a great question. So yeah.
Super. Matt, any thoughts before we go to the next question?
I think sometimes companies starting on these journeys tend to just automate with reckless abandon, right? It's just go in and do whatever you can. It was sort of like the Excel macro approach, just build it wherever, however, at any cost. And I think that a better way to approach this is to use this as an opportunity to do a little bit of spring cleaning, right? So in some cases, there's long overdue tasks that just haven't been done. There's platform decisions that just haven't been made. There are dependencies that if you get those things in order, you can create a much more scalable automation approach and strategy later on. So I think one of the things that being very thoughtful and deliberate in this process, doing it with a company like HCL or others, right, is being very deliberate about how you go about doing it. Not doing it with reckless abandon, but understanding, what do I need to do first, get my house in order on these three things, and then scale and deliver more value over time. So I think that's one of the things to do, is just remember this is an opportunity to get your house in order and to use this as a platform or an opportunity that can be used for many years to come, not changed every single time someone makes a left turn or a right turn.
Yep, and it's never the wrong season. You don't have to wait for spring to do it, right? You can do it any season of the year, get you clean and get your house in order.
Fair enough, yeah.
So
totally.
those who are thinking about waiting until next spring, okay, Adriana, what else is up? I have a couple of other questions we could do, but I want to keep going on if we have any other audience questions.
Sure. Okay. Driving alignment between management teams is critical for successful transformation agendas. How are you driving this alignment to make sure both the companies are looking at the same in context of transformation?
Anybody want to jump on that one first before I volunteer somebody?
I could say a couple of words.
All right, go ahead.
I think, just from my position in Xerox, really leading these particular capabilities, the alignment with the business and the business stakeholders and the business strategy is the most important item. It's more critical than the technology, the enablement, the infrastructure. At the end of the day, you really have to understand what the customer stakeholder wants to achieve, and then figure out what the best technology enablement could be, right? And what to drive the outcomes they're looking for. That alignment is it really will make or break most of the implementations, right? And we make the mistake all the time. since we have a certain basket of capabilities, will come with those, and sometimes they're not a good fit, and you kind of miss as far as the value. And hopefully you catch those soon enough. But that's you have to understand the technologies too, but understanding what the stakeholders are looking for and asking yourself, can you really help, is a critical first step. That alignment is also just critical. Great question.
I'll jump in.
Hey, Wally, can I add to that?
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I was just going to say, build on what Steve said there. I think it's alignment and it's sponsorship. You've heard Steve say a couple of different times, moving to a digital way to work. So the leadership in Xerox messages this tops down, right? So there's a sponsorship around, that's where we're going. That's where they're going internally. That's where they want to go with their customers as well. And so I think that sponsorship helps drive the alignment. Obviously you can have structured governance to help you align, but you need that sponsorship. And I think if you think about HCL, the line of business that I'm in, servicing Xerox, is called digital process outsourcing. So again, we're culturally, that's where we're moving together, right? And so I think, if this is just a one-off, go out, throw some bots at it, drive some efficiency, will you get some benefit? Probably. But is it really going to do what you want? No. You need that level of sponsorship, the governance, and then that alignment comes that Steve talked about. That's where the power is.
Yep.
Matthew, you had a point there?
So I think it comes down to what we talked about when it comes down to company identity, right? Is it a part of your company's DNA? Do your employees understand this, and do they understand the why? And I think to some degree, there has to be a conscious effort by leadership to infuse every single role with the mindset that they have an opportunity to provide business value in the things that they do. There should be no transactional roles. And everyone has an opportunity to add value along the way. And as you sort of start to change the mindset, if you can get the teams to embrace how the technologies can help them do their jobs better, then no jobs become about mundane tasks, right? Everyone wants to shed themselves of the mundane tasks and be delivered the necessary information and tools they need to do their jobs better. So I think this has to be done at a corporate level, right? It has to be done at the most empirical level for people to understand that you're a transformational company, that through that transformation, more value is delivered to the customers, and everyone has a role, right? You are not a data trafficker. You are not a copy and paster. You don't perform any of those activities. Even if occasionally you have some judgment-based activities, your role is to deliver more value to the customer. And you can do that by being equipped with the right information and the right technology. And if everyone understands that, you'll have a workforce that's working in concert with these technologies that will bring a lot more value with every day that they work and everything that they do.
Hey, Wally, just one more thing to add on. It's not easy, and we don't have it figured out, because at the end of the day, this is all about a giant management of change. Just like, shared services and the way of working, offshoring, all of these kinds of things were big changes that we've been through in business over the past 20 years or more. And it's a big change. And so you may have the alignment at the top, the sponsorship at the top, but it needs to go down through the entire organization. So we don't have it all figured out, and it's not easy, right? But I think it's something you have to constantly be intentionally thinking about. How are we going to drive that change with all of the different stakeholders all throughout the organization?
Yep. That's great. So there's a question I want to get to that was on the mind, and I'm going to ask for a rapid fire, rapid answer to this one. All right. How do you ensure that what you do on digital workforce automation efforts indeed makes the life better for either the internal employee or for the customer? Right? Many times we all have good intents, right? And we go to say, this is going to make people's life great, and then it doesn't get used or adopted because it really didn't do the trick. How are you making sure? 60 seconds or less. Matt, let's fire away at you.
No easy answer. It's careful design. It's thoughtful, deliberate planning. It's having a strategy with what outcomes you're trying to achieve, and it's having an outcome-oriented, plan. right? So what are those outcome-oriented plans? If all you're trying to achieve is some level of automation, I assure you, you can do that, and you can do that rather rapidly. However, will you be achieving the outcomes you're trying to achieve? What is the customer impact? And I think the last piece of that is measure it, right? There's the old adage, right? Measure to manage. If you can't measure it, if it's not driving up customer satisfaction, if you don't understand how to quantify the value in terms of revenue or benefit to your people, then you need to rethink it, or you need to think about your strategy a little harder. So I think those old adages still apply a little bit.
Matt, that's great. Bob, 60 seconds or less on that one. Give me your best piece of advice and ways to ensure that we're doing good things here.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would just say we're attempting to really bring the HCL team members, what we call our ideapreneurs, into the change, and it fits with our culture, right? And so, yes, we're trying to drive efficiency, but really what we also want to do is to make work more inspiring for our people, right? How can we unburden them and then free them up to do, more value-added work? And I think at the same time, how can we also give them new skills, new capabilities that become part of their toolkit that make them more marketable as an employee? And so we do things like botathons, we do trainings. There are ways that we're bringing people into it to actually understand that the value is where the value can be for them and also for the enterprise.
Super. Stephen, you want to crack at that?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. Like you said, I think Matt and Bob had very good points. I would just add that the way we involve our people is to talk about moving at the speed of software. So when we talked some of the previous questions about sponsorship, driving a message into the organization, we really call this moving at the speed of software. And then taking that a step further, it's understanding where that software can deliver the value that it's supposed to inside of a process. And that's really the answer that I would add to your question. I think if you understand really how RPA works and or some of the more advanced technologies like the machine learning and AI, or the hyper automation that HCL brings and some of their platforms, then you understand exactly as you're solutioning where it makes sense to deploy that technology inside a process to drive the value, to enable the employees, and ultimately realize the value.
That's great. Let's do a check here real quick. Adriana, do we have time for one more rapid fire question, or we need to start wrapping it
We've
up?
got time.
Okay, so give us one more from the stack, right, of questions that have come up. And guys, I'll turn to you with, again, same rapid fire, 60 seconds or less off the top of your head, best answer.
Sure. Has the pandemic led to an increase in automation COE in an effort to scale automation programs across organizations? If yes, which model is gaining most traction? Centralized, decentralized, or hybrid?
Wow.
I'll take that one. I'll take the first crack at that one. On the shared services side, we're seeing a lot of it, right? And the pandemic spawned it. F&A, HR, across the board. Most of the outcomes we're seeing, they involve what I'll call, it'll seem like an oxymoron, virtual centralization, right? So bringing people together, operating as one shared service, but it doesn't matter how or where you're operating. And with that centralization comes the standardization necessary to infuse tools, the scalability necessary to infuse tools, and to bring tools towards a process to deliver more value. So we definitely saw a rapid shift in that over the last year and a half. Global business services, global enterprise services, all shared services processes, large business cases based on centralizing, standardizing tasks has been something we've seen a huge increase in.
Stephen or Bob?
I'll give it a shot. Yeah, so good question. I think certainly more adoption of automation in this past year. I think just as a course of doing business, we needed to do that. So a lot more adoption of automation and analytics. Just kind of building on what Matt said, I think that we run a pretty strong centralized COE. However, as the technologies have become more scalable with lower code requirements and easier to adopt by the organizations, we've really been pushing for organizations to pull and adopt. We've been facilitating that, as Bob mentioned, and with HCL in various boot camps where we bring these technologies and let the employees pull. So I would say, strong central COE really took us through the pandemic. Now I think we're at the way the technology is going, we're going to more of a hybrid model to scale.
Great. Bob will give you the final word on that question.
Yeah, I think obviously acceleration, more adoption that's happening. I think there's more virtualization because of the pandemic itself opened up some of that. And I think the third is, what we try to do is, our digital colleague is pre-configured in many cases. And so it's an opportunity for employees to be more empowered to actually do some of these things with the click of the button themselves. And so that's fostered more of it as well.
Great. Andrea, I'm sure there's many other questions, and I apologize to the audience that we won't get to them. The questions you gave us were excellent, a great participation, and to my colleagues here on the panel, your answers, especially under the pressure for me of rapid fire, they were great. Right, wonderful. It's almost at times where you finished each other's sentences and thoughts and builds, etc. So a great team of people to work with. I'll wrap it up with a few thoughts, right? And then we'll end it by again thanking our panelists and thanking you all. I took three things away, right? Kind of 3 Ps, right? Process, planning, and people. And so on that process side, something that I've always tried to live by as a CIO is process, people, data first, get those right, and then automate, versus jumping in and automating, right? And then seeing what the impact is on people. Do I have the right data? Do I have the right process, et cetera? Because if I can automate a bad process, right? If you're making 10 mistakes today, I'll automate it, and we'll make 100 mistakes for the same amount of money and time. So I took that as a key point. And Matt, something that you highlighted of what you're seeing, especially on healthcare interventions. Can you imagine if we just automate on healthcare interventions without thinking out process, data, people-wise first, right? What may be intended as good doesn't come out as well. So I took that as a point. Planning, whether it's with IS in mind, information security in mind, or whether it is with good process in mind, et cetera. Don't just dive in and start automating. Don't just turn it to a group of people that says, you are our automation bot, digital workforce automation team. Just start doing, right? That's not going to work. All of you kind of hit on the think, focus, think about what we're doing here, doing it carefully, doing it right. Doing that work up front is going to save so much time and so much accuracy and quality later. And then a number of you kind of talked about something that it relates almost to a marriage, right? Where in a marriage, that identity, what you bring to the table, that alignment, that sponsorship of each other, working through change, right? So if I think about just the example of Stephen and Xerox and Bob and HCL and the marriage, and Matt, I'm sure you've been involved in a marriage as well, right? To make a good marriage work, right, takes those things of alignment, what skills one party brings versus another that complements each other. So the themes for me, right, really boiled down to what you shared is, right, process, planning, and people. That 3 Ps that kind of bring it together. So I think great thoughts. I'm going to wrap it up here by thanking you all as a panel before I turn it to Adriana to close out. Stephen, Bob, Matthew, you guys have been fantastic to spend the last hour with. Thank you so much for what you've done, and look forward to working with you again.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you to all of today's speakers and participants. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. A special thank you to the HCL team for partnering with us. A replay of Avasant's digital forum and the slides shared today will be emailed to all attendees and available on our events page shortly. Thank you again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at another event soon. Cheers.